And then there was one. What's going on, everybody? It's your boy J Main back checking in with the people. Back with the season finale review of HBO's The Last of Us. We have come a long way. I still can't believe it's actually already been 9 episodes and we are at the finale of the season, man. This went by so fast, but I have definitely enjoyed making these episode reviews, and I do plan on continuing to do them for season 2. The format may change up a little bit. Trying to figure out a way to make them a little bit shorter, maybe less information and more straight to the point, but we learn as we go. Let's get to it. Episode 9, titled Look for the Light, starts off with a flashback. Now, I was so happy to actually see another flashback in this show because I feel like we haven't been getting none for a long time. Now, this flashback actually starts off with a pregnant woman running through the forest. Now, you can hear some infected in the background, so we're assuming that she's being chased by infected, but none really in sight as of this moment. So she's looking behind her as she runs through the forest. When she comes out of the forest, there's like this big house at the end of the field, and so she's running towards the house. She finally makes it to the house, and when she gets to this house, it seems as if she was expecting somebody or some group of people to be there because she's calling out for help. She's calling out to someone, letting them know that she's there, but no answer. So she immediately starts to run up the stairs, and as she's doing that, her water breaks. And you could probably, understand that. She's under a very stressful, tense moment. She's running for her life, and she looks like she's about 8-9 months pregnant anyway. So at any moment, she was probably already ready to start to give birth. And so her water breaks in this moment. Talk about a terrible time to actually have your water break and your body be ready to deliver a baby. So she brings herself into this room and traps herself behind a door, looking to protect herself from any infected that actually might come her way. Now, you hear some glass break downstairs, meaning that the infected have probably gotten into the house, and you hear them like chasing and running up the stairs after this woman, and she's scared out of her mind, and so she whips out a knife and it's just kind of like sitting there waiting. She put a pretty big filing cabinet, looked like, at the door, and this infected bursted through that door like no problem. So that just goes to show you how strong the infected are in this show, and I was just happy to see more in this episode because I feel like we haven't seen infected for a while at this point, and we actually got to see some action between humans and the infected. She's fighting for her life, but eventually she's able to get the knife that she had whipped out because it had got knocked out of her hand. So she gets the knife that she had whipped out and ends up stabbing the infected in the head and throws it off of her. The wild shit after all of this has been going down is that she actually ended up giving birth to the baby while she was fighting the infected. I thought that was a crazy scenario because, she's probably not meaning to do something like that, but she's exerting all of this energy, using all of her force and straining her body to the point that she probably pushed out the baby at the same time. And so not something that's unbelievable, but crazy in the moment because, like I said, she's fighting for her life and ends up delivering a baby at the same time. What also was crazy about this moment is we end up learning that she had got bit during that time. So now we're sitting there seeing the baby laid out on the floor and her bite mark at the same time, and she's still connected to the baby through the umbilical cord. And so she, thinks really fast and cuts the umbilical cord. That way she can try to maybe slow down or stop any progression of her being bitten, infected, getting to the baby. Of course, we ultimately learn that this baby is actually Ellie, and this is her mom. I thought this scene was amazing because this is actually something we didn't even get to see in the video games. Now, I was sitting down talking with my wife that I love when this show actually does stuff like this because there is still so much information out there to be known about the origins of things in this show and origins of things even in the game that we didn't get to experience. So to see a scenario where there's Ellie's mom and we seeing how she was born and how Ellie's mom got bit, which later led to possibly how Ellie is immune. Ellie's mom is actually played by the voice actress that plays Ellie in the game. So I thought with that coming full circle was also another great, amazing thing about this scene, because immediately when you're hearing this woman and she's fighting for her life and running from the infected, you hear those expressions and those mannerisms that you got from Ellie within the game. And it actually also reminds me how as much as I loved Bella Ramsey, and I still do, I think she did a fantastic job as Ellie, but there is only one Ellie. And as soon as you hear this woman's voice, you immediately get reminded, if you play the games, of just how that voice is so distinctive and how much of a fantastic job she did as playing the Ellie character in the game. Hours go by and we're later on in that night, same flashback, and we see a group of people actually walking towards that house that Ellie's mom is in. And we learn that this is Marlene with a few of her men. And you know, as they're approaching the house, it seems like they're looking for someone, possibly Ellie's mom, and they make their way in the house and they can hear her like singing or, you know, like talking to Ellie. And they go upstairs and they approach her and they see that, you know, it is her. And that is exactly who they were looking for. Ellie's mom, her name is Anna, and her and Marlene are great friends. Now, what I thought was interesting was when they were talking, Marlene mentions that it took them a little bit longer getting out of the QZ, which is why they only arrived there now, and Anna has been there prior to. So what I think is happening in this situation is that whatever QZ Marlene was in prior to making her way to Boston is where they escaped from. Now, Anna being pregnant with Ellie and her, Marlene being best friends, I'm assuming that Anna had the same ideologies or aligned her ideologies with Marlene about maybe building the Fireflies, rebelling against the Fedra, and, you know, just trying to find a way for the people to rise up against the government. Their first thought was to escape from wherever they were and make their way to Boston, where they can maybe lead a group of people who might have been, you know, forward, or maybe they heard to the grapevine are for a revolution. Anna is talking to Marlene and is telling her, like, you have to take Ellie with you to Boston, and you also have to kill me, because I'm not, in my head, she's saying that because she's not wanting to turn into an infected, you know what I'm saying? And she wants Marlene to take her daughter, and, you know, Marlene's reluctant at first. Of course, this is a lot of responsibility to be placed on her, not only taking on her daughter, which is her best friend, and raising her, but also having to shoot her or kill her because she doesn't want to turn into an infected. So while Marlene was reluctant, she took Ellie, and she didn't really want to do it, but she handed Ellie off to one of her men, and then returned and ultimately shoots and kills Anna. We are now back with Joel and Ellie, and you know, Ellie is kind of like just sitting off by herself in a daze, and you can kind of hear Joel in the background like calling out to her. And you could tell that we're past the winter because the weather is nice. They're not wearing no coats. There's no snow. There's some wind, but the sun is clearly shining, and the temperatures are obviously warmer. Ellie doesn't seem to care about what Joel has to say, and she kind of seems a little bit disconnected from everything that's going on around her. Now, I assume that this is because of just a lot of things that have happened over the journey. One major thing of her, of course, of her having to kill David in the previous episode, even though at this point that was probably some months ago, it's still something that probably is weighing heavy on her throughout this journey, amongst other things. I mean, they've been through a lot. So, you know, at this point, it seems like Joel is saying that they're getting close to the hospital. They should be there any moment. So it's all finally like starting to hit her of everything that she's been through to actually get to this point of reaching the hospital and meeting up with the Fireflies. Joel begins to talk to Ellie about teaching her how to play a guitar, because this was something that he loved to do. And again, she just seems disinterested, but ultimately agrees that it would be something that she's interested in learning. They come to like this demolished building, and Joel sees, he spots a ladder because they're trying to find their way up. I think the theme of them when they get to a new area is in order to scout it, see what interest points are around. They get to the inside of a building, get to the tallest point, scout it, look around, see what's available, and then make their way down to that area. Joel, like I said, he spots this ladder and he wants give Ellie a boost, that Sony boost, give Ellie a boost up so she can push the ladder down and Joel can climb up. Joel helps her up to the ledge, gets her on top, and she begins to push the ladder down. But something actually catches her attention to the point that she actually drops the ladder, almost hitting Joel in the face with the ladder, and it falls to the floor and she just runs off. So Joel is like, what the hell are you doing? Like he grabs the ladder, finally climbs up, and now he's chasing after her because she's gone. Like she's running to whoever had grabbed her attention, and Joel don't know what it is, so he's probably nervous and scared, like she might get herself into danger, but she's so excited and interested in what is coming next. And so Joel finally catches up to her, and she's outside on like this balcony, but it probably wasn't a balcony at first. It looks like maybe a half of a building that exploded, and she's like outside but also inside at the same time. And there's a giraffe actually eating leaves off of a tree. This has Ellie stunned, and it's probably nothing she's ever seen before, at least not in real life, because she's grown up in the quarantine zone. So again, you almost forget that fast that she is new to the outside world. And this scene right here was so beautiful within the game as well as in the show, because it all, like I was saying about her having that moment where everything comes back and hits you, it hits the viewer or the player that, wow, something as simple as going and seeing a giraffe out in nature is something to her that she is astonished at. Something so amazing, something that we living in a world that we can go to the zoo at any time we want and see something like that, is we take that for granted. And then you look at somebody like Ellie, who's like just stunned by like one of the best things she's ever seen in her life. Joel begins to like help her feed the giraffe some of the leaves, and the giraffe kind of like runs off a little bit, and they're chasing it, and they get outside to another balcony where you can see a huge field, and there's just like a bunch of giraffe just running around in the field. Beautiful scene, excellent recapture of what we seen in the game. Again, just re-emphasizing just the beauty of nature, and them traveling and seeing nothing but infected and raiders and people living on hard times, and something as simple as a family of giraffes running through a field looking for food and things like that. It's just something so peaceful and beautiful about it. While they're up on the balcony, Joel begins to talk to Ellie about just the whole journey that they've been on, talking to her about meeting up with the Fireflies and that she doesn't have to go through with it, about finding a cure, and they could just go back to Tommy's house at Jackson and live out life there. They don't have to go through it at all. But Ellie is insisting on that they finish this journey because it can't all be for nothing. They've been through so much. Why turn back now when we're right here, getting right to the end of the finish line? We just got to see it through. And she promises Joel, like, wherever you want to go after this, whether it's back to Jackson or to a sheep farm or even to the moon, because that, of course, is something that she was interested in doing. They could do that, but she just wants to see this situation through. They make their way from being on that balcony to a medical camp. And, Joel is explaining to Ellie about what these were. And back at, when the outbreak first happened, Joel actually was in one of these medical camps that they set up because, of course, at this time, either hospitals are overrun or hospitals aren't reliable because maybe they're swarming with infected. And so the military, the army, had to set up medical camps to help people that, were going through things. And Joel said, after he had got grazed by the bullet, he said, when we learned in previous episodes that he had got grazed by a bullet, he said somebody shot at him with bad aim. He was in one of these medical tents, to get some help for his injury. Joe actually comes clean about that moment and that injury that he had, and he says there wasn't a man that actually shot at him and missed that caused him to get that mark on his face that grazed him with a bullet. It was actually him himself that did that. Joel was actually suicidal. After Sarah died, he didn't see a reason to live. He didn't see a reason to continue on. The world had gone to shit. Sarah, of course, is no longer with him. Sarah's mom was no longer in the picture. And he just, didn't care about life anymore. And I can't blame him. At that point, you done been through so much loss and the world is lost at the same time. It's probably hard for somebody to either stay sane or have enough faith or fight left in them to continue on living in this world when it is the way it is. And that's another thing I loved about this episode, continuing on the theme of learning more about Joel within those 20 years from when Sarah died until now. We don't know, we only know about what he talked about, maybe being a hunter, a raider, somebody who was violent and did anything he had to do to stay alive. But at first, he wasn't always like that. He probably was a broken man who, just lost his daughter and the world has gone to hell and he didn't see a reason to live. He felt internally that he was ready to go, but something made him flinch at that last moment. He grazed himself and, in an attempt to kill himself. So, Ellie, she's, feeling concerned and, happy as at the same time that that didn't happen, because they wouldn't be where they are now today if it wasn't for Joel. And Joel is like insinuating pretty much that she was the reason that he continued on, at this point, because Ellie was bringing up how time heals all wounds, but Joel is like, no, like it wasn't time that did it. And he kind of like stares at her and like, like I said, insinuating that it was actually her that helped heal his wounds. And that just, again, a lot of full circleness in this episode where Joel is confessing pretty much to Ellie that she is somebody that helped him get over the loss of his daughter. And she is now somebody that he truly cares for and doesn't want anything bad to happen to. Joel and Ellie continue on after this scene before being ambushed by a group of men who throw concussion grenades, smoke grenades, one or the other, if not both, as they're on their way to the hospital. And, at this time, Joel, he's all distorted. They grab up Ellie and eventually knock out Joel with the butt of their gun. And Joel eventually wakes up in a room where Marlene is. And Marlene's like, welcome to the Fireflies. So this part was crazy because it didn't actually go down exactly like this in a game. And it's one of my beefs with this episode. I feel like this episode would have been one of the best if they just included some of the parts from the game that they skipped out at this part. So before Joel and Ellie get brought in to the Firefly base at the hospital, there was this bus terminal / bus depot that they come across. And, they had to get through this in order to get to the hospital, but in their way was a bunch of infected. So while I thought it would have been a great idea for them to have this scene, just maybe not as much infected that was there, because when you get to the scene, they pretty much throw every type of infected at you in the game. And I know that don't make sense for a realistic style show, but it would have been cool just to see a little bit of infected for them to get through at this point. And a lot of it had to be stealth because there was like bloaters and stuff at this part, and you could sneak by them without making a noise if you could, and get past them. But some of them you actually had to take out, like some of the runners and the clickers you had to like take out before you could move on. And if you did make noise, that's your ass. You better have enough ammo in the game in order to get by, because they was on your ass, bloaters, clickers, everybody chasing after you. It got crazy. So while that wouldn't be realistic to have all those type of infected there, I thought just having a few of them there and then what came after is what I really was hoping that they had included, because it showed another layer of Joel and his care for Ellie. So, and it also introduced some parallels between the first episode of the season and what would have been the last episode of the season. So after you had got through that bus terminal, or towards the end of the bus terminal, after you come across the infected, you start to see that area was starting to flood, and you ultimately come to an area where the water is raging, and you have to use some half sunken buses to get across this path in order to make your way towards the hospital. And so we know Ellie doesn't know how to swim, and so as they're walking across, Ellie makes it across in the game, but as Joel is climbing his way over, he actually gets tripped up and falls on the platform that ultimately collapsed and has him fall into the water. So when he falls into the water, he eventually gets his way into a bus where he's trying to climb his way back up. That eventually collapses down, and he's like pushed towards the back of the bus from all the water. And you see Ellie actually jump across off the platform that she was on, because she was safe and sound on that platform. But she, as her wanting to help Joel, she jumps back towards that bus that they crossed originally and breaks the glass in order to help Joel get out. In the midst of all of this happening, Ellie ends up falling off of the bus and underwater. And so her not being able to swim, Joel, rushes towards her after he escapes the bus and sees that, she's kind of unconscious underwater, looking like she might have drowned. So he grabs her out and drags her out of the water and brings her onto the land. And once he realizes that she's not breathing, it immediately reminds me of the scene when they find Sarah, who had been shot by the soldier, and they see that she's no longer like breathing, or she's fighting for her life. So Joel immediately starts to perform CPR, and that's when those members of the Fireflies come from the hospital and come towards to pick up Joel and Ellie. But what made this scene so awesome is that Joel is performing CPR and they're telling Joel, put your hands up. He's at gunpoint at this point, but he doesn't care because he wants to save Ellie. That's how much he really cared and loved for her. And he's just pumping and pumping and pumping away till they eventually knock him out. And then he wakes up in the Firefly base with Marlene. That included with the infected. Some of the infected would have made this episode damn near perfect. Marlene begins to explain to Joel that the doctor feels like the cordyceps and Ellie have grown with her since birth. And going back to that first scene, we know that when her mom had gotten bit, Ellie was actually still connected to her mom through the umbilical cord, which must have acted fast because she did cut it. She did cut the umbilical cord really fast. And she also lied to Marlene, saying that she had cut the umbilical cord before she got infected, but that wasn't true. So the cordyceps within Ellie have grown with her since birth, to the point that the chemical messengers that were produced are making normal cordyceps think that she's a cordyceps, and that's why she's immune. So that they won't attack her, the cordyceps within her, because they feel like she's already a cordyceps. So even if she gets bit, nothing is going to happen, and that explains her immunity. So what the doctors want to do is remove that from her, multiply it in the lab to produce the chemical messengers, and that way they can give it to everyone. So if they inject these people with those same chemical messengers that Ellie has within her, then what can happen is it can create immunity for those people that may get, if they ever were to get bitten down the line, they won't turn. So now at that point, all they would have to do is just try to rid the world of those infected. Joel starts to think and realizes that cordyceps grows within the brain. That's where they attack. And so in order for them to do surgery on Ellie, it would have to be on her brain and it would kill her. And so he immediately acts like, take me to her, in an aggressive way, to the point where he gets knocked down by a Firefly soldier. And Marlene's telling him that there's like no one else for them to do this on, because Joel's like, find someone else. She's like, there's no one else to do this on. They didn't even tell Ellie what they were going to do to her, and that she won't feel any pain, of course, because she'll probably be asleep when they do it. And so Joel is very resistant, and Marlene's like, take him out to the road, back toward the road, and give him his stuff, and see him on his way. And if he tries anything, to shoot him, because she is not letting Joel get anywhere near Ellie. This is a chance for them to save humanity. And Joel is ultimately trying to stop that, because he don't give a damn about humanity when it comes to Ellie, because he has developed such a relationship with her that he now basically sees her as his daughter. If you want to really get to the nitty gritty, that's what how he feels about Ellie. The men are guiding Joel out of the hospital, and then he goes full John Wick. This is the Joel we've been waiting to see throughout this season, because we know it was in there. But of course, as bad as this scene was in the game, I thought they did a good job in the scene translating it to make it feel a little bit more realistic. Not as many soldiers as we had to fight in the game, but it was a lot. I think I counted, he killed 15 people in this scene, as he was like going through the hospital, shooting people, taking their guns after he kills them. He's even killing people that were surrendering, giving up their weapons and running away. Like, he was on a straight rampage, but he pretty much saw red. Like, he didn't want nobody but Ellie and was going to kill any and everybody in order to get to her. He finally approaches pediatric surgery, which is where they are performing or getting ready to perform the surgery on Ellie. And when he enters the operating room, he sees Ellie laying there on the bed and the doctor with a few nurses. And so he asks for them to unhook Ellie so that he can grab her. But the doctor is like, nah, you're not taking her from out of here. He's like, this is our chance to save humanity. You is not taking her out of here. Joe immediately, boom, quick encounter headshot, takes the doctor out. You're done. He doesn't kill the nurses, but tells them to unhook Ellie and turn around as he grabs Ellie and takes her out of there. Joel is carrying Ellie through this hospital now after killing everybody pretty much, and he gets in the elevator, which takes them down to the hospital garage so that they can get a car and get out of there. So as they're walking through the garage, they get stopped by Marlene, and she's telling Joel, like, listen, you can't save Ellie forever. And Joel's like, listen, I understand that, but you don't get to make that choice. you don't get to kill her. One, without her knowing, and two, just to save humanity, just because that's what you feel is right. And Marlene challenges Joel like, but who makes what you're doing the right way? And this is the age old debate about The Last of Us: is who is right in this situation? Is it Joel for saving Ellie from these fireflies that were trying to kill her in order to produce a cure? Not anything that'll be 100% works, but it's the closest that they ever been to somebody who's been immune and could possibly help them create a cure. Or is it Joel who feels like, this is somebody he's grown to love, somebody he wants to protect, somebody he now sees as his daughter, and he doesn't want to lose her, and also feel like her life would be cut short of just great things that could be out there in the world left for them to experience. And, I always felt like I understood both sides, because I don't feel like anybody is right or wrong in this situation. You don't know if the cure for Ellie is going to be 100% from what they could do. They could be incompetent doctors. And in fact, if you play the game and you listen to some of the audio logs, it seems like they pretty much were incompetent doctors. So there's no 100% certainty that this would have, been 100% cure. And, Joel, again, feels like this is somebody that he's grown to love like a daughter. But then you have the Firefly side, where this is the closest that they've ever been to a cure. And in history, you have to take those chances in order to produce something like a cure. This is how it happens. It's trial and error. And they don't have, like much test subjects to do this on. Because, there's not a lot of people that would be willing to do it, or maybe not a lot of animals around that they could do it on. So this is something that is necessary for the greater good. And so that is an age-old debate. And I get both sides. I get how people feel. Me personally, I would have been Team Joel. Like, I don't give a damn. Call me selfish. Call me, killing humanity. I don't give a damn. I'm not going to be here much longer anyway. So I want to make as much of my life that I have left on this earth as peaceful and graceful as possible. And if it means not losing somebody that I look at as a daughter, then so be it. So, Marlene is looking at Joel like, it's not too late for you to give her up. The scene switches actually to now Joel driving in a car. It looks like he's by himself on the road. And it gets you thinking like, damn, did he really actually give up Ellie? And then you find out that Ellie is in the back seat of the car with him. And she's still in her hospital gown. So this is directly right after whatever happened in that garage with him and Marlene. And so Ellie starts to wake up. She's still a little bit high off the drugs, but Joel begins to explain to her, or lie to her, about what had happened at the hospital. He starts to tell Ellie that, the Fireflies couldn't do nothing with her. When they got there were a bunch of people that were just like her. And, they couldn't figure out a way to come up with a cure, even with all these people that were immune. He begins to tell her that the Fireflies have now given up on any chance of looking for a cure. And he's taking them back to Jackson, taking them home. And so Ellie is like, well, where are my clothes? And he's like, whoa, more lies. Raiders attacked the hospital and I barely got you out of there. So that's why you're just in a hospital gown. And Ellie's like, were there any survivors? Like, is Marlene okay? And Joe's like, nah, it's over for that. The interesting part about this scene is that while he's like lying to her about the scenario, what happens, it also kind of like flashes back to the part where they were in the garage and Marlene was begging Joel to give Ellie back. And you see that Joel actually shoots Marlene, a little sneak style, because he's cradling Ellie in his arms, but he has the gun in his hand at the same time, like under her leg, and he shoots Marlene. Begins to put Ellie in the car, and you hear like Marlene like begging for her life, and Joel approaches her and she's like, please, like, just let me live. You know what I'm saying? You could take Ellie, just let me live. And he's like, you'll just come after her, and shoots her in the head. Now Joel and Ellie, they're on their way back to Jackson at this point. The car that they had took from the hospital breaks down. They begin to walk. He says it's about like a 5-mile hike back to Jackson. Nothing that they have never done before. This is light work for them. They done traveled across the damn country by this point. So a 5-mile hike to get home is easy. And, they begin to talk. Joel is talking about Sarah and how her and Ellie probably would have been like best of friends. But then as they get within like a sight's view of Jackson, Ellie stops and she begins to tell Joel about the time he had asked her, when was the first time she ever killed somebody. And at that time, she didn't want to talk about it, but now she does. And she begins to tell Joel that the first time she killed someone was actually her best friend, Riley. And this goes back to that episode 7 where they were in the mall and they got bit together. And she says that, they were waiting for both of them to turn, but eventually Riley turns and Ellie doesn't. So Ellie had to ultimately kill her. And she was like, Riley was the first to die. Then it was Tess. And then it was Sam. And, she's kind of just like listing off people that I feel like are people that she felt like she cared for, that ultimately end up either leaving her or dying. And, Joel's like explaining to her, like, that's not on you. That none of that is your fault. That's just kind of how life is. Sometimes life can make you feel like, it's over. Like there's no hope. There's nothing left. But you always have to try and find something new to fight for, that'll keep you going. And that's one of my favorite quotes in the game, man. Like you can literally apply that to the real world and anything in life. Like, whenever you feel like, things are at the worst, like it can never get no worse. Whether you lost a loved one in your life, whether you might have got laid off from your job, not only can things be worse, but as long as you're still breathing, there is always something new for you to fight for and to live for another day, man. You take that quote with you for the rest of your life, and I think you'll be all right. But he's just, breaking that down to Ellie, and she asks him, like, swear to me that whatever you're telling me about the Fireflies and what happened back at the hospital is the truth. Now, us as viewers, as the gamers, we all know this motherfucker was lying, but he's not gonna tell her that because that would strain that relationship. And he's getting to the point where he feels like he has someone that he can love like he loved his daughter. And he doesn't want to ruin that for anything. Like it's been 20 years since he felt like this. And this is something he'll take to the grave if he has to, in order to keep that feeling alive. And he swears to her that he told the truth. And she was like, okay. And they were on their merry way to Jackson. And that was it. Season over. What a ride this season has been. Now, me personally, overall, I thought the show was average. This season was average. Maybe like a strong 6. A week 7? On a good day, you might hear me say it's a week 7, but I'll give it a strong 6 on any other day. I say that because I feel like while they did a fantastic job with, giving us more insight into the world of The Last of Us, more insight into how the pandemic ultimately started, where it originated, how Ellie became, immune to this virus and who her mother was, learning more about Bill. And, even though that was a change in direction, just seeing stuff like that, I thought was an interesting way and something that they did that was a positive for me with the show. But I couldn't help get over the fact that I felt like everything in this season was rushed. I felt like 9 episodes wasn't nearly enough, and that it caused them to cut out some very important scenes that I thought would have made a huge impact. I understand this is a show, this is a drama, they want to go for more realism, but I thought there were a lot of key gameplay elements that could have been in this season that added to the context and the characters and the world of The Last of Us that they did not include. A lot of great set pieces like the one I just mentioned back at the bus depot that showed, Joel trying to resuscitate Ellie, and it's parallel to his daughter, trying to save his daughter's life in the very first episode. And it also brings me back to episodes like episode 3 with Bill. And while I enjoyed, getting that insight on a relationship like that in this type of world, that episode was an hour and a half. So it begins to make me scratch my head. Like, did we need that episode to be that long? And if so, did it take away from other episodes that we got in the future? And why they were so short? This season finale was only 43 minutes. Half of what we got in the Bill and Frank episode, who are 2 characters that really don't have no significance to the story. You know what I'm saying? It's significant to the world of Last of Us, but not to the story of Joel and Ellie, where I felt like they dropped the ball in a lot of areas in order for them to build the character relationships between the two. The infected in this world nowhere to be found. I mean, we had a few episodes where it was on point, but the majority, I feel like, of these episodes, you got maybe one infected that might have felt like a threat, but most of the time they weren't. I feel like it started off really good where they introduced the tendrils, and I thought that was going to be fantastic because now they're all connected like a network, and it could be at any given moment where these swarms of infected are just chasing them. But they did all of that for us to get a few scenes where there's infected, maybe one or two, and then that one big scene where they all come up from underground. Like, you're going to make that drastic of a change from spores to the tendrils, and I feel like you didn't even utilize it to its fullest of potential. A lot of people brought up the point to me that, you know, they didn't have the budget to go broad with this season, and that maybe season 2, now that this show is a hit success because the views are through the roof. I believe it surpassed House of Dragons in terms of viewership on HBO. So that goes to show you that this is a hit. And they already confirmed that season 2 is on the way, and season 3 has also been confirmed. And they did say that, you know, part 2 of, you know, the game is going to be broken up into 2 seasons. So I can definitely see how that's going to happen. I'm sure the budget's going to be even bigger for the next season. And maybe we'll get more episodes for them to flesh out more things like infected, more set pieces in the season. So I hope that's the case, because I'm still going to be here for season 2. This is one of my favorite stories in gaming, in life, period. Like, I love this story. I love these characters, and I'm here to see it through to the end. So this has been a great journey for season 1. I appreciate everybody that tuned in to watch me break down these episodes, listen to my reviews. I will be back in probably a more condensed form in the future, you know, try to make these videos shorter. And yeah, man, Last of Us season 1 down. Y'all have a good one, and I'll catch y'all in my next video. Peace.